Good morning. I'd like to call Friday, February 6th, 2026 meeting of the Standing Policy Committee on Finance and Economic Development to order. I'm Councillor Jeff Rawadi from the North Kildonan Ward, and I'm the committee's chairperson. With me this morning, we have Councillor Matt Allard, Councillor Marcus Chambers. Our committee clerk is Carly Dolsky. We have a number of members of public service with us this morning. At the table at the moment, we have Tracy Graham, our CFO, and Mike McGinn from the Planning, Property and Development Department. At this time, I'd like to acknowledge that we are in Treaty 1 territory, the home and traditional lands of the Anishinaabe, Innu, and Dakota peoples, and in the national homeland of the Red River Métis. Our drinking water comes from Shoal Lake 41st Nation in Treaty 3 territory. Councillor Chambers, would you care to move that the minutes of the meeting held on January 16th be taken as read and confirmed?
So moved.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. We have a delegation today. This is exciting.
Thank you. First, though, if I could just have we have a motion for a leave of absence for Councillor Oligo.
Okay.
So moved.
Okay. For personal matters or okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Thank you. Yes, we have a delegate today who is joining us via Zoom. We have Mr. Fred Horbody, who is speaking to item 1 in opposition to the item, the 2025 budget adjustment from Planning, Property and Development. He also submitted supporting documentation. Morning, Mr. Horbody, you're now live with the committee. If you want to just turn on your mic or your microphone and unmute your camera.
Great. Hopefully you can hear me okay. I'm having some internet troubles at my home, so if I do cut out, I'm going to just switch over to my cell phone. So thank you, Chairperson Barati. I guess I just want to understand, has the submission that I've sent been read, or do I need to go through that?
Sorry, I missed it.
Sorry, I just asked if the submission that I had made previously had been read. I still want to use my time if it's already been circulated and read by the council members and the administration.
I don't think I've seen it, but...
Okay, I'll go through it very quickly, just on the highlights. So I didn't realize I was speaking first. I thought that the department was speaking first, but I have no problem with that. So my name is Fred Horbady. I'm the CPA, and I'm opposed to the recommendation from administration. The information provided by the administration on this, as it relates to the accounting change and required under PSAB 3400 revenue, does not seem to make sense to me. The change in accounting treatment for the adoption of this change in 2024 should have been handled as a change in accounting policy with either retroactive restatement or implemented prospectively rather than it having been impacting the current year budget. This standard was effective in April of 2023 and should have been factored into all budgeting related to the 2024 fiscal year. The discussion and planning for this accounting change should not have been a surprise to anyone, as it was first published in 2018. So prior to the pandemic, with nearly constant discussion in the public sector over 5 years prior to its implementation in 24. And just to the council members in the room, I realize that's a very technical item that I just discussed. It's probably not something that you want to dig into, but it's a technical matter for accounting purposes. And then as well, as Ms. Graham had identified in the last meeting, this is a non-cash adjustment, so there's no cash impact to the city of Winnipeg. The reserves for this change would have been on the balance sheet of the city, and this would just have been a reclassification from deferred revenue on the balance sheet to revenue. So just moving it between the two sheet financial statements of the city. While this may have had some impact on the financial statements of the city, it should simply be handled as a variance to be explained rather than a reallocation of budget lines. As for the reallocation of the approved budget for the city of Winnipeg, I'm strongly opposed to this reclassification as it is a material adjustment. And to quote, we're stealing from Peter to pay Paul, as the saying goes. Budget variance occurs, which means that plans for expenditures either were over or under expectation. Those over-under situations are usually a result of differences in reality as compared to what was planned. Those types of situations need to be explained if they're material. In this case, there was a material underspending of salaries and benefits within the PPD department. This would normally be a good thing as we're saving money, but in reality, it's a massive issue that needs to be addressed. The city is growing at a very rapid pace, and the lack of adequate resourcing in this critical department like PPD, whose role is to ensure that planning is done in what is well-planned, controlled manner, this is under duress. If there is not enough staff in this department to meet the demand, the city council needs to know about it and its impact. It either means that there's less oversight or there's more outsourcing of work to consultants, which is likely showing up as an overvariance in another budget category. This impacts my community directly, as we're now at the mercy of a secondary plan being led by two large developers and their third-party consultant, those two developers own less land in our area than the rest of the residents combined. So rather than this being a city-led secondary plan, which is allowed under the charter, it's now being led by these two consultants as well as two developers, and causing incredible upheaval within our community. It's a very complex issue within our area. There's about 300 residential properties that are located within the boundaries of the secondary plan area. But I digress. That's not the reason that I'm here to talk today. Budget variances should not be hidden by moving budget from one line to the other. It's incumbent upon the finance teams within the various departments of the City of Winnipeg, as well as the CFO's office, to be held accountable to report on these variances, and for the department leadership to be held accountable. Otherwise, what's the purpose of budgeting in the first place? And I'll leave the rest of actually, no, there's one other thing that I wanted to say related to this. Finally, I object to the use of the budget variance and salaries to be used to fill a gap left by the $0 funds left in the permit reserve fund. How is this even possible that the permit reserve fund can have $0 in funds left in it, given the enormous amount of development that's taken place in the city over the past number of years? If the $337,000 in remaining funding for the project was approved by council, it was not available in that reserve fund, then we really have a significant problem with the administration, as this was approved in June 2022 to fund a really important downtown project, very high profile. And it should have been factored into the disbursement process for whoever holds the approval authority to issue funds from this reserve. And I'll leave it there. I don't want to go into the rest of my presentation, but I do have some additional comments that I'd like to make. So hopefully I still have some time, because I wasn't planning on having to read this out loud. So I know I only have 16 seconds left, but if I could be allowed to speak just for another probably minute and a half.
Councillor Lar moves an extension of 2 minutes. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Carried.
So my additional comments, I apologize, Councillor Orlico isn't here, but I just want to talk briefly about that. Just thank you to Councillor Orlico for making the motion last meeting to have this matter held over to today, to allow the department to update the previous submission that did not reflect all the late adjustments that had occurred within the department's finances. And without a hint of sarcasm, I want you to know how appreciative I am to see our city councillors ensure that due process and accuracy in the public record is maintained, and that the members of the committee are engaged and accountable for the important role that they have within the finances of the City of Winnipeg. I do want to draw your attention specifically to page 5 of the documents provided by the administration. I did provide a screenshot to the clerk this morning, but I understand it's not able to be shared because I didn't send it in yesterday. But the clerk does, I believe, have it if you want to share it on the screen, but I can just walk you through it otherwise. So upon further review of the submission from PPD, so if you look on page 5 under the heading Salaries and Benefits under Expenditure, you can see that the reason why this budget item is so far under budget, as well as some historical context to why this department does not have the funds left within the permit reserve fund. So if you look at the top portion where it says grants in kind for the redevelopment of Bay Downtown, you can see in the very last 2 sentences or two rows there, it says the balance in the permit reserve fund available for transfer to the department is currently nil. So this $337,000 cash expenditure, a refund to this project, cannot be offset. So the funds have to come from somewhere. This was approved back in June of 2022. So this is not a brand new item. This should have been factored into how the funds from the permit reserve fund were utilized. And then if I can just draw your attention a little bit further down, where it says salaries and benefits under expenditure. So from 2020 to, I'm just quoting, from 2020 to 2024, on average, the department had exceeded its salaries and benefit budget by $170,000. And then in brackets, it says offset by a transfer from the permit reserve fund. So the permit reserve fund was being used to fund the over budget situation in salaries for the past number of years. So it must have been used to take the money from there to pay for previous over expenditures. But I think more importantly, to highlight the last 3 rows there, and I apologize, I'm over time. I needed more than 2 minutes. An increase of 10 budgeted FTEs, staff resources required to meet provincial permitting regulations. and higher than normal turnover, resulting in several vacancies. So the province of Manitoba, if I understand this correct, required additional FTE to be hired to be able to meet whatever project was supposed to be happening. That didn't happen. So it created a positive budget variance. So you didn't spend as much money. So to use those funds now, or not funds, but to use that budget to offset something else, like this accounting change, which was a non-cash item, to me is really just very confusing and really is not making the city accountable. So I'll just wrap up very quickly. I have one last page here to read. So if I understand this correctly, the department has incurred a positive variance in salaries and benefits due to not meeting the required staffing levels imposed by the province for permitting regulations, presumably to meet an incredible demand for development and building permit issuance. Further variances in this category are due to unfilled vacancies within the PP&D department at a time when there's enormous growth in development, where these staff are so urgently needed to ensure orderly and effective city growth. The enormous growth in building permits and development fees in the past 5+ years have somehow left the permit reserve fund with nil funding, which I find unbelievable. I don't understand. The department does not have the funding to meet the council approved expenditure to fund the reimbursement of fees for a key city and provincial priority downtown project, because they use the permit reserve fund to pay for relatively small variances in their salary budgets in the past. And the primary reason for the overall shortfall in the budget for PP&D is due to an accounting policy change that had been known for over 5 years, that had been properly accounted for in the budget approved by the department, but it's now having a material impact, non-cash impact on the department's budget. So all that this budget shuffle is going to accomplish is to bury the fact that the PP&D department did not have the required number of staffing to meet a provincial requirement to cover for a non-cash impact of an accounting policy change that should have been factored into the city budget for 2025, as the policy was actually required to be implemented by the Public Sector Accounting Board for April 1st, 2023. At the end of the day, the variance remains within the categories. At the end of the day, the variances remain within the categories they relate to, and explanations be provided to make everyone accountable for their budgets. Why even require budgeting if the departments are allowed to request moving funds between budget categories to make variances disappear? The bottom line impact is still going to be $450,000 drawdown on the financial stabilization reserve, if I understand this correctly. So regardless of whether you retroactively revise the budget or not, to use a slang term, you're shuffling chairs on the Titanic. It's still a $450,000 hit to the bottom line. If not already within the mandate of the committee, I would recommend that a periodic review of all reserve accounts, along with a breakdown of committed funds from those accounts, budgeted use, if they're used within the city budget within a month, within the year, as well as uncommitted funds to be undertaken at least once or twice a year, as the balance sheet of the city is just as important to be reviewed as the statement of operations. And with that, I'm done. So,
Thank you very much, Fred. Any questions?
No.
Okay.
Public service.
Sure. Okay. Have a great day, sir. Thank you. All right, we'll move into reports. And speaking of budget adjustment,
Yes, the budget adjustment, we had to come back here, we had come here in January, but as Tracy, has mentioned numerous times, the final year-end results are a bit of a moving target when you're doing adjustments. But given the fact that the previous report was based on a September forecast, things changed in the last quarter. We were asked to come back today with a more updated number, which we have. So we're looking at being over budget at the end of the day by $450,000. And I'll make the point again that, and it speaks to what the delegate talked about, the non-cash aspect of the adjustment to cemeteries revenue going to the cemeteries reserve. In hindsight, of course, we should have booked that last year, but our practice had always been to do it the year following, and it had no impact because revenues were relatively stable year over year.
Sure.
So it was very close to budget. But with the change in accounting policy, where we had a $5.5 million windfall last year, doing it the year following resulted in this big major variance. So really all we're doing this year is we're taking money that should have been in the cemeteries reserve last year, but went to the FSR instead. and moving it from the FSR into the cemeteries reserve. That's effectively what's happening. It's not a cash thing. No one's waiting to be paid anything. It's just tidying up of the books at year end. And I mean, Tracy can speak to it, but we are reviewing this whole process because some of it is probably not the best use of your time. Sure.
So it is all explained away in terms of how it's been moved around and
Yeah,
reconciled?
yeah, there's, what happens is, I'll give you an example, a simple example. Let's say you pre-plan your area and you buy a plot in a cemetery. You'll pay for the plot and you'll pay a fee for the open and close, basically dig the hole, put you in, bury you. Up until last year, we would defer all of that revenue. Let's say it was $150, $100 for the plot and $50 for the open and close. Then the rules, county rules changed and said, Councillor Chambers has bought that plot. We is the title holder of that plot. You have met your performance obligation, city, and you must recognize that revenue. The open and close fee, the $50 in my example, well, that would be when at need, as they say, when it happens. But we had deferred all of that, millions of dollars over the years until the people who pre-planned used their plot or their niche. And we had to move all of that plot and niche sales revenue into operations, recognize that revenue. So that resulted in like $5.5 million in 2024. And following our practice in 2025, we did the transfer of 25% of plots, 15% of niche sales, 10% of scatterings. That goes into the cemeteries reserve for the perpetual maintenance of the reserves. But because of that big revenue number last year, we had a big transfer number this year. Had we done the transfer last year, we wouldn't be here today. So this is correcting for last year, and it should be noted that we are changing our process for 2025. We have recognized that transfer to the reserve this year, early in 2025, and we will always do it in the same year. So if there was a big fluctuation, we'd be fine.
Right, makes sense.
So like Fred said, it's very technical. He made some valid points, but it's, again, as Tracy will, as it reiterated, we're not waiting to pay someone. It's non-cash. It's just kind of tidying up the books at year end.
Councilor Rogers.
Councilor Lard, yeah.
I think I heard the public service say 2025, the change was, and the delegate is indicating that the change happened in 2024.
No, 2024 is when the change happened. So at the end of 2024, we recognized the big $5.5 million that we had sitting in deferred. But our practice at the city was always to do the transfer to the reserve in the following year, 2025.
Okay.
Now we're doing it in the same year. Had we done it in 2024, again, we wouldn't be here today.
Yeah, the revenue was adjusted in the right period.
Yeah.
Which was subject to our external auditor review. So there was a big amount of work done on all the city departments that had revenue changes based on the changes to the accounting standards at that time. So, so the books have been right.
Yep.
It's just a matter of the transfer of the timing to the reserve. And the difference that when we struck the multi-year back in 2023, and the ripple effect of an accounting adjustment that was adopted later.
So it's not a matter of robbing Peter to pay Paul. It's a matter of changing Peter's name.
Sort of.
Yeah. If you look at the city as on a consolidated basis,
Robbed.
there's no change.
Yeah.
Essentially, last year we had equity of X amount sitting in the FSR, and we had equity of X amount sitting in the cemetery reserve. So it was a total equity of this. It's still a total equity of this. We just moved from one reserve to another.
Good.
Yeah.
So we need a motion to accept his information.
I'm a bit.
No, we have to approve the recommendations.
Yeah, there's recommendations.
Okay. Well, this is for PP&D.
Councillor Chambers, I will say that.
Well, I mean, we've heard the explanation.
Yeah.
Just low.
But I was just going to say that actually receiving this as information is really
in the future.
what's
it would be
going
good.
on, because it's just adjusting accounting. There's really.
Well,
nothing you
okay,
can
so
do.
then if that's
We
the
have,
case,
we have to accept it.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no,
if that's the case, like, Mr. Chair, can we do that?
So right now,
Not
the
yet.
process is I do not have the
not-
delegated authority
Yeah.
to make this
Okay,
adjustment.
so we are making a spending.
that reason is
Correct.
questionable.
Yeah,
Okay, so it's not information, we are
No.
authorizing new spending.
But I am undertaking a process internally to look at adjustments like this and whether or not they continue to make sense.
Okay.
In a kind of a red tape reduction.
just to be absolutely clear, Council, we're not asking for new spending.
No,
Yeah.
it's from one envelope to the other
Yeah,
envelope.
exactly.
In reality, we're not really making a decision here. It's already kind of done,
Yeah.
but it's a formality.
And there's
Which-
loads of transparency throughout the year, through our various quarterly forecasts, through, so there's still lots of opportunity for us to talk about
That was my-
operations and where we're at.
That was
So,
my question,
yeah.
is if there would still be that accountability and
Absolutely.
transparency, even, as you look at reducing red tape.
absolutely,
Okay, but that-
yeah, so that's what the quarterly forecast process would
Okay,
be
and
for.
just a out of respect for logic, so Council Marwadi, this is done or it's not done? Like, this is a new authorization required to,
To apply non-salary expenses against a salary budget.
Okay.
And that's the technical ask that we have of you today.
but this isn't net new, like, it's a net new ask in terms of moving one budget to another budget line,
Yes.
to be clear. Okay,
Yes, that's correct.
so it is new, right, Councilor Marwadi?
Doesn't increase the overall envelope, but it does,
No net new cost of the city, but it is
Correct.
different. But,
Correct.
okay. All right, I'm ready to move it.
Okay, thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, carried. Number 2, application to the Canada Manitoba Job Grant Program.
all right, so joining me today, was when I join me, are Dave Clark, the Director of Human Resources, Stephanie Mages, the Senior Manager, Employee Health and Safety Programs, to just hit the highlights of this report, which is a request to accept money, grant money for training.
Sounds good. Good morning.
Good morning. So in terms of our ask today, we made an application to the job grant program. And it's almost best example is a rebate of funds. So we put forth a submission of a number of training events that we've done over the course of this year and for planned events for the next half of the year coming up. And they awarded us a refund of that money, which we intend to apply those funds to update our learning management system in the areas of department curriculum accuracy, reporting efficiencies, policy tracker, and essentially benefiting the entire civil service. So well-used money, for sure.
Any concerns? Yes,
Councilor Marwadi, process again. So this is going to be a grant that we get, but the report on page 4 says it's an expenditure of 42,104. Why don't we see the intake on the? Why don't we see the plus if it's a revenue? Why are we seeing costs?
Explain that they're going to use for software. They're going
Okay.
to take the windfall and reinvest.
So it's got zero budget impact. Okay.
Yeah.
They are reinvesting money. I mean,
Thought I'd ask the question.
we couldn't be forced to do it separately through the budget.
No, I
but
see it now.
It seems reasonable enough. It's not a pile of money.
Got it. Thanks. I'm ready to move it in.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, carried.
Appreciate that. Thank you for your time.
Garage.
Hey,
Or garage replacement.
the transit team is now joining us.
Ooh, get on that.
So that includes Greg Buantu, Lori Fisher, Jess Crowder, and Aaron Cook to talk about the next 2 reports.
Bus twice this week.
Oh,
You're a model. You're a model.
It was good.
Bring out some bus.
Yeah, on request from, was that Wednesday night and last night home for a concert. So,
Excellent. Good. Good deal.
Was the on request okay?
yeah, it actually came nice and fast. Yeah,
Good, excellent.
it was on another trip when I requested it, but it came quite quick.
Good.
Good
All
morning.
right, Jesse, you gonna start us off?
Sure. Yeah.
Morning, everybody. So this is North Garage Replacement Project Status Report number 10 to the period ended November 30th, 2025. Project is on schedule and on budget, and we are approximately 60% complete of the overall project and about 14% complete of construction. Percent of adopted budget spent to that period was 11%. Fairly light report at this time as we just started construction in the fall, but up to the end of November, PCL had completed initial site activities. So that included supply of temporary power, securing the site, demolition, excavation, some test piling and dewatering. The other item to note was in November, we had approval from the Standing Policy Committee on Public Works for an award with Manitoba Hydro to bring power to the property in the estimated amount of $5 million. I can just move to the risk section. We have one new risk in the report related to suitable clay material on site. And we're currently reviewing available borrow areas, including city-owned facilities for the most economical options to address that. We have two ongoing risks that we're continuing to work through, which are the reduced project contingency, which we've discussed in the past, and impacts from tariffs between the US and Canada. We're still monitoring that, but have not seen any direct impacts related to tariffs yet. On the financial front, as of the end of November, we had submitted 10 financial claims to the province for payment totaling just over $6 million for the provincial and federal portions, and we've received full payment for those claims. I can look at Appendix B for a second. As mentioned, we're about 11% of project budget spent to the end of November, actual costs of $21.285 million. Some engineering, design and other for just over $7 million, starting to see some construction payments of $4.7 million and land acquisition of just shy of $8.5 million with some internal financing and overhead costs. Going back to the main report, property acquisition, we still have one outstanding expropriation negotiation still ongoing with the owner of that property, so no changes from the last report yet. To date, stakeholder engagements and communications. At the end of October, early November, we notified the area councillor and local area residents and business owners regarding noise that would be upcoming due to the piling work that was beginning in late November, early December. That's been the primarily main activity on the site since the end of November, and they're approximately 2/3 done the piling for the foundations as of today. And there are no subsequent events after the report period end date. So any questions?
Are we gonna find the clay?
We have found suitable source of it, yes. We're just kind of trying to finalize that right now.
And the single source contract for hydro is just basically because they're the only game in town.
Correct.
Good. We're this motion. Concur with the recommendations of public service.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Mission to Zeb.
All right, thanks. So this is similar, project status report number 10 for the transition to zero emission bus project, same period, ended November 30th, 2025. Project is on schedule, on budget, and approximately 56% schedule complete and 43% of the adopted budget spent. Gonna jump to the discussion section, talk about bus rolling stock. So our zero emission buses, we had an original tender with New Flyer in 2022, with an optional 4 extensions under that contract. The original tender was for 16 zero emission buses. We've received 15 of those. Those are 8 battery electric and 8 hydrogen. The last bus was anticipated to arrive in September, but it was delayed to a recall, so it's tentatively scheduled to come in June. 2 recalls we saw in September from Transport Canada. One was regarding battery modules software, the other regarding the battery modules themselves. So 4 of the 8 buses have received a software update and returned to service. All 8 buses are going to be retrofitted with batteries from a new supplier, with the remaining 4 prioritized for delivery early this year. First extension under that contract was awarded to New Flyer for 24 battery electric 40-foot buses. Production started in October. We are anticipating to start getting deliveries of those next week through to the end of July. Second extension, the first contract under that to New Flyer, council approved in September for up to 25 more 40-foot zero emission battery electric buses. So that was in a maximum amount of $42.377 million. Looking at some charging infrastructure, we have 2 chargers commissioned as of the end of November, supporting in-service operation and testing of the buses. In September and October, we had a couple of single source awards to Manitoba Hydro to bring power to our facilities for those chargers. And in November, we had SPC Public Works approve an over expenditure for the advancement of phase 2 chargers, which we discussed around the discontinuation of those products. So we moved forward our plan to purchase them earlier and brought that total contract up to $11.1 million. So the revised total completion date for the charging infrastructure is Q3 of this year. The hydrogen fueling station, in September, we awarded a contract to Canatech Consultants for the construction of the station, approximately $1.5 million. That started on October 6th. We've had a number of delays with some unforeseen challenges in the underground work on our property. So we're moving some of the less critical work into spring and working to complete critical work this winter. Equipment for the facility is ready to ship and expected to be installed and operational. The report notes before the end of January, that has now been moved towards the end of February, mid-March due to those unforeseen underground conditions. Looking at risks for the projects, we don't have any new risks in this report. We have 4 ongoing risks that we discussed previously. So that's around the shutdown of asphalt plants, and I mentioned we're moving some critical items to work around that. Purchasing power for buses, we mentioned due to inflation, we're working towards buying as many buses as we can, maximizing the budget we have. Tariffs between the US and Canada, we're still monitoring that with New Flyer. We understand there are some tariff impacts. We're waiting on them to give us some detailed invoicing and what those actual impacts are. And then longer than anticipated production lead time. So that was a risk of putting our ICIP funding deadline at risk if the buses are taking longer to be received. So we've communicated that to the province and also to New Flyer, who have understood the deadlines and agreed to meet them. And then we've mitigated that phase 1 charging technology that I mentioned by awarding that phase 2 earlier than planned. So that is in the mitigated category. Financially, at the end of November, we had submitted 11 claims to the province for payment totaling just over $85 million for the federal and provincial portion. We received approximately $74.5 million. Looking at Appendix B for a second. As noted on the front page, we've spent approximately 43% of the adopted budget. A little bit under $1 million in engineering, design, and other. Construction category of $118.5 million. That's charging and fueling infrastructure, but the bulk of that is obviously purchase of buses, which falls into that category. And then some internal financing and overhead costs for just under $120 million in actual costs to the end of November. Going back to the report, property and stakeholders, no updates for this report. We do have one subsequent event after the report period end date, which was a second contract under the second extension with New Flyer, which was approved in January by council, I believe, for up to 15 40-foot battery electric and up to 12 40-foot hydrogen fuel cell buses, maximum amount of $51.397 million. Any questions?
I had 2 questions I wrote you know earlier. So I'm concerned about this fiscal risk of hydrogen, the $8.7 million contract with Azola, page 5 for methanol to hydrogen. Guarantee, without a guarantee of green methanol, I'm worried we're paying a premium to burn fossil fuels. Natural gas derived from, hydrogen derived from natural gas, just extra steps, more energy burned, not good for the environment. So I thought I'd ask the public service what they thought of that. I let my thoughts known to the councillor, the chairperson prior, but I thought maybe I'd give the public service a chance to respond.
We'll ask Aaron to jump in here.
So this is using methanol, not methane, which is a little bit less emissions than methane reforming. It is still 60% less emissions than a diesel bus when you're looking at total life cycle emissions. So it is still a reduction. Biomethanol is a product that I foresee being in more supply in the future, but it's not readily available right now. The city purchases large amounts of methanol today for the water and waste treatment plant, which is what we're using for this contract. So it arrives via train. It's not transported by a vehicle. So there is lower transmission emissions with that product today. So it's only transported by vehicle from the train yard to our facility. So like very few vehicle emissions associated with that fuel. It is a fossil fuel though, you are right. So it is not the ideal, but we're looking at a transition. It doesn't have to be 100% overnight. And we're moving the needle significantly by removing 60% of the emissions from our vehicles. The station itself is fully convertible in the future if, like I said, if you can get biomethanol, it can be a direct substitute. All of the equipment, the tanks, whatnot are compatible that you could tie in delivered green hydrogen if it becomes available in the future. We don't necessarily have to continue producing. Your dispensers, your compressors, everything else in that station is completely compatible with alternative fuel. And then you could also potentially convert that station to an electrolysis system in the future, but there would be additional civil works associated with that, as the system that we're using doesn't require a sewer connection. It vents water and steam right now, so it doesn't require a sewer connection, which we would have to add if we were to convert to an electrolyzer in the future. But the system was significantly less expensive than the electrolysis system that we originally looked at, and it was really what was needed to keep this project going. It's considerably more climate friendly than the electrolysis systems that were available. There wasn't really any that worked at below -20. This system has been operating in Alberta well below that for the last several years. So it's a proven technology that we know that will work here. It's moving the needle, and it was something that allows us to test this technology and see if it is something that is going to work for our climate long term. So it is something that we would not necessarily continue this, if long, it's really supporting 20 buses. It's not a solution that's going to work for 100 buses, or it's not a solution that's going to work for 650 buses, but it's something that allows us to be able to validate this and really figure out what we need to do as a city to transition.
Thank you. And Councilor Brody has a second question.
Yeah, go for it.
It was related to the technology failure. The report, page 3, confirms battery electric fleet is facing recalls requiring full battery replacement and battery delays. You probably sort of can't speak to that.
Yeah, we've had 2 battery recalls. One affected all 16 buses. That was a software update that was corrected within a few weeks. The battery electric buses in particular had a manufacturing defect. New Flyer evaluated whether there was a possibility to correct that, but it was determined that they could not correct the manufacturing defect, and all the batteries have to be replaced. So in this replacement, it's fully covered under warranty. We're getting all new packs installed on the vehicle, some additional wire harnesses for the substitution. So what it effectively is going to do is make this first generation of battery electric buses exactly the same as the next generation that we're starting to receive this week. So we'll have the same battery supplier. Will actually give us a 15% increase in battery capacity free of charge as part of this. But short term, it's caused some pain points in our rollout. The vehicles have to be parked outdoors and within, they can be charged indoors, but they have to be monitored for 2 hours after charging. So it's created some operational challenges. The vehicles themselves are still operating, but they're also been derated as well. So there's been some additional sort of safety features that have put on this. But basically any bus that had not been on property or accepted prior to this recall coming from Transport Canada, we weren't allowed to accept, which is why only 4 of the battery electric buses are in service, and the other 4 are either parked or in the process of being retrofitted over at New Flyer right now.
Okay. Those are my questions for the public service. Thank you.
So the only question on page 4, where last bullet equipment is ready to ship and be installed before the end of January for the public record, it will be reflected at the end of February, March.
Yeah.
That's it.
Are you ready to receive this information?
Well, Councillor, further to my notes, I think I'll be not supporting this report at this time. I just think that we should not be approving further spending or further pursuing on a strategy that, well, according to this report and public service explanation, I feel is not delivering to the extent that a diesel fleet would. So with that, I'd like to vote against it.
Okay. Again, it's frustrating that, we've had these ongoing challenges, but again, it looks like we're on track to have these buses operating. It was always understood that the hydrogen buses, the fuel source is an interim type thing. It's sort of proof of concept, not for, like you say, a 100-bus fleet. So I'm still prepared to support the motion and the project continuing at this time, but I certainly understand Councillor Allard's frustrations on that. Chambers, are you prepared to move this?
Yeah,
Okay.
I'll move the motion.
Thank you. All's in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, carried. And I think we're in opposition. Councillor Chambers, would you mind taking the chair for just a moment?
Sure.
I'd like to move suspension of the rules to deal with just a new item of business. I'm going to be requesting a one-time status update on fair products.
Okay.
So
I'll move the suspension of the rules.
I moved it. Councillor Chambers is in the chair.
Is it the chair?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, carried.
I know it's not a $25 million plus project, but because it is literally the cash register of Winnipeg Transit and a rather important project, and we've had the last transit fare technology system was a little plagued with some issues and stuff. I'm just hoping to get maybe a one-off update in, I guess, 3 months' time. Is that the next
May 8th would be,
May 8th would be the next time transit folks are here. Let's line it up with May 8th.
Is that a verbal or written report?
Maybe we'll go written even. If we could. Is that too onerous, or do you?
What's the subject matter responsibility?
So in the budget, we've approved the procurement of new equipment, technology, services for transit fare products to replace PAYGO. I know there's a report commissioned to look at, the types of products we offer, 5-day passes, 7-day passes, fare capping, stuff like that. I'm just I don't think we need to have a quarterly report every quarter, but it would be nice just to see where that is in the process and get some timeframes maybe that we expect, various milestones and rollout expected for it.
You're
talking about the system, just to clarify, the system transition to the new technology, right?
That's right.
Okay, yeah, like a project update.
Yeah, talking about changing fares though?
It could very well include changes to fares,
Okay.
and some of them may be positive. So, like if you take the bus a ton on a weekend, every time after 5 o'clock on Friday through midnight on Sunday, you keep tapping the same payment card. It caps out at about you can actually save money on it. There's discussions of all sorts of different things. So a little bit's about the technology, a little bit's about the policy and what's being expected there.
So would it be too onerous to add on there whether or not we're seeing a reduction in fare evaders? I mean, we had come out late last year with a strategy on fare evaders.
That might be a separate request, but
Councillor Body, sorry.
I think it would be relevant in this report to talk about perhaps
I mean,
if there's any way to estimate how much the failed technology, is costing in revenue. I mean, number of times I've been to a football game, they just say keep going. It's like people are watching. I better make sure I'm paying.
Yeah, Councillor Body, I'd be willing to support this motion, but I would like to the fare report to honor the free transit for children 11 and under.
I'd be shocked if they were considering changing that. But
I would be fair.
That's fair.
But if that would be included as not an option in your motion,
I mean,
I'd be willing to support it.
I mean, there's discussion. Do seniors really require a break on fares? So, I mean, it's all controversial.
I know. This was one of my campaign promises, and if I'm going to be suspending the rules to look at fares.
I know a lot of this nitty-gritty stuff would go to Standing Policy Committee on Public Works. I don't want to really go too far into their turf, but being the cash register piece, what has gone to Public Works in regards to like some of these changes, like whether we look at is 11 and under Sacred Cow, is 50% off for seniors, like where's all that at?
We have our fare collection project, which I think is what you're asking for us to sort of bring back an update on.
Yeah.
If I'm correct. If we can do a verbal report, we can bring more information closely aligned with the date that we come here due to the timelines for submitting a written report. because we are moving along on this project, so it would be a little more up to date, I guess is what I'm saying, if that's what you want.
I can look for both.
But I think what I'm understanding is you really just want an update on this project. Is that?
Well, what I
correct?
want is, I understand there's gonna be a fair review as part of this, perhaps. I want that fair review to continue with the fair product of children ride the bus for free, 11 and under. I campaigned on that. It's important to me. I think it's a good way to get more children on the bus. I don't think there's a big revenue impact. I voted on the report. I fought for the report. I don't want another report coming forward that I'm supporting today to be canceling that report that I got in the past. So I was asking Councilor Wadi if there would be I don't know, maybe a friendly amendment to the motion, or that it include not,
Right, but
not.
How far along are we? I mean, and that's gonna be a separate policy for council to vote on.
I think I understand what you're getting at, but that would come forward in a report with recommendations, right, Lori? On when we're ready to make recommendations. My understanding is you're simply asking for an update on where we're at with that.
Yeah, and again, I think this report is gonna say, like, here's the time frame where we're trying to consider possible changes to those products, whether they be, well, all of the policies on fares.
So can we ensure the product includes the possibility of having fair, children-free?
There's gonna be a whole separate debate report on that. It
Right.
doesn't have to go to council.
But aren't they
Like,
tied?
have you hired a consultant that's looking into that?
It could be
correct.
There's already been a report, hasn't there?
So the master plan did outline some general themes in terms of where the ultimate fare structure should go.
Right.
We are considering like those in terms of being true to the, master plan vision, to also be aligned with the functionality that's going to be in the new fare system. And so right now we are in early steps. The RFP actually has just closed, and we're going to be starting to evaluate those bids very shortly. So we are moving forward with
On the
that.
technology side?
On the technology side, exactly. So once we've nailed down the actual functionality of the new system, we're going to then, at that point, be able to start developing the revised fare structure with regards to fare products to align with the technology. And that will look at things like the fare capping, the mobile ticketing, those types of things that are included in the scope. But we haven't got to that stage yet with regards to actually mapping out the new fare structure. So, and we're certainly not in a position to put forward recommendations regarding any changes to what Councillor Lord is concerned about.
Well, I just heard the scope that did not include children free 11 and under.
No, that's not true, actually, at all.
Well, I just heard words and they did not include that. I heard fare capping. I heard another type, but I did not hear free product.
Okay, so free, I guess we
11 and 12.
Yeah, that's not a product. That's just a policy regarding who can ride for free. When we're talking about products, we're looking at e-cash, monthly passes, the term passes, post-secondary rates. Like those are the products when we're talking about products.
Okay.
So who can ride for free?
So that's not a product.
That's not a product, no. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So this motion is not pushing children.
And
right.
anything
That's
we
not,
want-
that's not my intention in the league.
We're not even there yet.
Yeah, it would,
Well,
whatever.
I heard
we
yet,
bring
though.
forward would be
No,
great
but
for me.
That's concerning.
But I also said at some point we will bring forward recommendations, right?
Yes.
And we're not close to that yet.
Yeah.
We're still dealing with the infrastructure part of dealing with the.
Well, I know, but
as
I'm also
Lori-
aware that infrastructure can tie things like fair products that if it's not a product, if it's excluded because they're free, then okay. But if the technology comes in and somehow starts wrapping in children 11 and under their engineering terms or their scope terms, then that's problematic. So I think there is a possible link here.
We're nowhere near that yet, though.
So we're moving a motion to
Get an
consider
update.
it.
But he's asking for an
This
update.
would be for information.
This is for information.
Yes, we're
For an
not
update.
changing it.
We're not bringing
Well,
recommendations forward.
I think I've made my.
We don't have the,
quite clear, so
I mean,
I'll leave it at that.
unless we made a recommendation to council to do something, it's not.
No, I don't want to, I want to keep things the way they are. That's why I'm
Yes,
concerned about this,
understood.
this motion. So with that, I've made my points. I will support your motion, Councilor Riley.
Thank you.
We just make sure we're saying like the financial implications, just so that we keep the purview of the finance committee. Otherwise, it's kind of moving into a public works.
Project status report like we do on all of our
Okay.
$25 million plus reports. So basically, we're allowed to request project status reports on
Yes.
projects under 25 million, but,
Yes.
so that's same
Okay.
idea as that.
Sure, okay.
Okay, this is a verbal report.
We'll do verbal.
Verbal report, okay. And so it is on the, what, is there a certain title of the project, transit fare? Like one of these things,
Yeah, it's an automated fare collection project.
automated fare collection project, okay. And this is coming to the May 8th meeting.
That's right.
Okay. Automated fare collection, okay. Perfect.
Call the question, Councillor Chambers.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, carried.
And I'll move consent to adjournment.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
All right. Thanks, everybody.